Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Stand Up Without Borders. It's my honor to have Jesse Appell on the program. Many Chinese audience probably know him as Ai Jie. He has a very unique stand-up career that actually started in China, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I did improv in America for fun in high school and college, but like real stand-up, I kind of started in China.
I know, yeah. I'm very fortunate to witness the start of your career, right?
You saw it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So.
You even have a club in Beijing, right?
I had one before the pandemic, but I started at the time, when I started that club in 2016, there were no like stand-up clubs. We were doing like bars. We were like in some sort of like random coffee shop here or there, pizza restaurant type thing. And I was like, we should have a spot specifically for comedy.
Yeah, I've been to your spot. Actually, that spot is very characteristically Beijing. You know, it's in the Hutang.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I missed my courtyard so much.
There's a little courtyard. That's true.
Yeah, it was really nice because it was like that was the idea, was to do a cross-cultural comedy club, and we had English and Chinese scenes there, and it was just like, it was a really magical place. And especially looking back now in the pandemic, I was like, at the time I was so busy running it and like frustrated when the air conditioning broke and stuff that I didn't really appreciate it, I think, for what it was. And now I'm like, oh, I miss my courtyard.
Well, what is like, just so did you do English shows more or Chinese shows more there?
In China, I did more Chinese shows than English shows. I did some English shows.
Yeah.
We had the English stand-up scene that had its own thing going, and then there was so much to do in the Chinese scene, especially once it really got started.
Yeah.
That I really went full into doing the Chinese stand-up, and in some ways I don't really regret that, but I do regret that I didn't do more English stand-up, because back in like the old days, like all these headliners came through Beijing.
Oh yeah, I know.
And
like
I didn't.
Ronnie Chang was
there.
And,
we had Ari Schaefer,
Jim Gaffigan.
Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, it was.
And so like it was a real, like, it was more connected to the Western scene than I thought it was.
Exactly.
At
And
the
Louis
time.
C.K. shot something. Oh, he actually did a show there after he shot some footage for his own, Comedy Central show. Oh, was it? No, the FX.
Oh,
show.
the FX. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did like episodes in China.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It was crazy. So it was, at the time, I just had this idea in my head. I was like, oh, the Chinese scene is cut off from the Western scene. And I didn't really think that through. And now it's like really cut off. But like, I kind of regret that. Like, I have like a lot of friends from the Beijing scene. They're like, I opened for Louis C.K. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I wish I could say that here. Now that I'm back in LA, people would know that. But yeah, it was, I did English and Chinese, and I think the Chinese language-wise was harder, but I feel like personality-wise was easier, because
you have people you're different from everyone.
Yeah, because it's like the challenge of stand-up in the first like 10 seconds is like, why should you have the mic?
Oh yeah,
and so if I come on in Chinese,
what kind of audience are you encountering? You have the mic.
Well, I always, maybe this shows my deep fear of the audience and their aggression. But like, we're sort of like, what do you have that's interesting to say? And then I think that if you have like even just a little bit of a spark in the first couple seconds, it can draw in the audience. And I have that in Chinese. I'm going up as a white guy. Hey, 大家好，我是爱杰西. And they're like, whoa, who the fuck is this guy?
Exactly. But it's always the fear of every stand-up comedian, whether or not I can make the audience like me in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of I was the opposite when I started out in Boston. Because people almost never saw Asians on stage.
Yeah.
And when I stepped on the stage, most people's reaction was, oh, I hope this is not a train wreck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ironically, did you feel later that this was good because the expectations were low and you always beat them?
Yeah, exactly. Like the bar was so low.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it is funny. It's like is one of the first things Master Ding told me. I studied the xiangsheng with Master Ding, who you met. The traditional Chinese comedian, and he was like, 先让观众喜欢你. It was the first rule.
Yeah.
Make the audience like you.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing here in the U.S. You know, it's like that is why all these political correctness is so important to comedians. You know, if they are turned against you, there's no way you can make them laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think a lot of times, like I knew that this was definitely true for me when I started doing stand up, was that I was very focused on the joke. I was like, if I write this joke tighter, it will work better. And to some degree, I guess that was true. But you're missing the big part, which is like, is the audience with it? Yeah. That was why the pandemic sucked so much, was because it wasn't like I couldn't sit down and write jokes. But the important thing was like, is the audience buying it? Like, is the audience
what do you mean?
do they like you? Is this an interesting topic? Is there energy in the room? Like, because I was like, because you can write, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I would sometimes write a joke I think is funny, and then I write a tag, and then I write a tag, and then I write a tag, and then I write a tag. And the first joke bombs, and I was like, oh, well, that's what I did all day, was write these tags. I don't have anything else.
But I think it's still worth it, because, if the punchline didn't work, you should treat that as a setup.
That's it.
And the next tag is the punchline.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Well, mentally, it's like, it's hard to overcome that. Like, I expected them to laugh here, but then they didn't.
That's what I always tell younger comedians. They always ask me, "Oh, what if I bomb?" I'm like, if you bomb, nobody knows.
Yeah, only you know.
Exactly. The audience will think, "Oh, this is part of the setup." You just keep going.
This is funny. It's like I've done so much stand up and so much improv, and the brains are kind of separate a lot, and yet, like, this is a really improv idea. Like, everybody is always scared in improv of, like, what if the scene goes badly? I'm like, who's to tell if it's going badly? There's no script.
Oh, yeah.
It's going badly because the audience reads that you are uncomfortable, and then they get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I guess if you don't get uncomfortable, I guess the worst case in stand-up is just like, oh, your laughs per minute went down or whatever. But, like, again, who's really counting that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, most of the time the audience probably couldn't tell you're getting nervous or you feel stressed out, as long as if you don't tell them, you just keep going, and usually people can't tell, unless you're just like sweating and getting really pale.
That was why there was this one show. I did a show in Nanning in Guangxi.
Oh my god!
In Nanning Daxue, Nanning University, in a gymnasium that had no air conditioning in the middle of summer. It was 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so like, 35 something Celsius, and no air conditioning, and I was just sweating like crazy. But the problem is, as a comedian, you don't want to be sweating because it's like, then it makes it look like you're nervous. And I'm like, I'm not nervous. I've done these jokes forever. The gym is not good, but I could do this room if it wasn't 95 degrees. And all the audience as well. Everybody kind of like half wanted to get out of that room, and only partially because of the comedy. But
do you feel that if the room is really hot, it's very hard for
literally
the
hot,
to laugh?
not like room's hot right now,
it's not a hot crowd.
Yeah,
the room
exactly.
is hot. Yeah,
exactly.
That's tough. I also wanted to talk about something else. I remember you did a extremely popular video right after the coronavirus started.
Oh yeah, after the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
Started.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the official tally of new coronavirus infections in China is almost zero. The city of Wuhan, where the virus started, is having its movement restrictions relaxed after months of lockdown. In that time, the virus has spread around the world. So what can we learn from China's experience in dealing with the virus? To find out, I'm joined by Jesse Appell. He's an American who is based in China, where he researches Chinese comedy, and he has a regular club. He has a club, and he's a regular on the Chinese circuit. Rather interesting background. I don't know many Americans who do comedy in China, but obviously you're very much in contact with people in Wuhan. Tell us what your friends have been telling you about the lockdown and how they've coped with it.
Sure. Well, I'm here in Boston right now. I came back for Chinese New Year for what I thought was 7 days, and it's turned into 9 weeks now. So, but I've kept in touch with my friends back in China, and in the beginning, I think they were in the phase now that a lot of the Western countries are going through. The news is getting worse every day. People don't know exactly what's going on. And then they reached a stage past that where they kind of had adjusted to their lives indoors. And now they're reaching the third stage, which is the country's opening up. A lot of my friends in Beijing, the ones who aren't comedians and the ones who have real jobs, are going to work every other day now. And the streets are opening back up. Restaurants are opening up, but they only seat one person per table. it's kind of a slow rise back into normal life.
That video actually got a lot of views in China, because you talked about how the Chinese are dealing with the lockdown and how people are trying to, support them,
Yeah.
That was incredibly funny. And
thank you.
Yeah, it
Appreciate
was,
it.
because, there's so many people who have watched it. But then, did you... What came after that? Are you keep making videos and
Well, what happened was during the pandemic, the weirdest maybe 6 weeks of my whole life, it feels like, was like when January 2020 to March of 2020, between when China started locking down and when America started locking down, because it was like everything was going crazy in China, and they were closing, people would, sleep in different rooms from their husband and wife because they went outside, and everybody had no idea what was going on. And then in America, I landed actually coming back for what was supposed to be a 9-day vacation has turned into 3 years now. But I didn't initially go straight home to Boston. I was in Miami for 3 days because my family was there. And so we were in Miami, and everyone's on the beach, and everyone's like, yeah, Miami. And back in China, the world was ending. And I was like, one of these groups has to be wrong. I'm like, and knowing what was going on in China, I was like, the chance that everybody would be doing this in China and they're completely wrong is almost zero. So I was looking at the train before it went off the rails in America, and I had this incredible sense of pressure to do something before the train went off the rails, because I knew that people in China needed help, and it was crazy. And I also knew that no comedians in China could perform because it was locking down and it was Chinese New Year. And I also was like, so if I'm going to do some sort of fundraiser show or something to be useful, I have to do it now, because Americans don't know yet, but they're locking down. Hopefully they're locking down in a month or whatever. And I guess it's even worse if they're not. So so I basically, really fast, I found my high school, I called my high school, and I was like, can we use the theater?
Oh, wow. Which high school did you go to?
Newton North, go Tigers.
Newton North. Okay.
You're also the Boston area.
Exactly,
so,
I used to live in Arlington. So, it's pretty close.
So Newton North High School, to the credit of everybody at Newton North, I showed up and I was like,
oh, that's quite nice.
I went to the Chinese teacher, and they got me to the principal, and they were like, yep, we should be doing this. They gave us the theater for free. They gave us all the staff for free. Everything was free. And we wound up raising a bunch of money for buying medical supplies. At the time, we didn't even know what we were going to do with it. Eventually, we bought supplies and sent them to the University of Wuhan hospital.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to get it into the country through the hospital, which was a whole separate journey. After raising all the money and buying all the stuff, we still had to get it into China, which was hard then.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, thank you for doing this.
Oh, no. It was... but it really did feel that way, because it was like... this was all my friends were locked down. Everything in China was my home. And so it was this was the moment where I felt like I could be useful and also make people laugh. And also the thing with the comedy is the main thrust of the comedy show that I did was finding videos of Chinese people in lockdown, all being super clever and just bored to hell, making a sock puppet and eating cars out the window. And the finishing thing I had was oh, they're preparing for the Olympics, and it was all these people playing sports indoors and swimming in their bathtub and stuff like that. So
there should be indoor Olympics.
Oh, I would love it. I just think, so apparently this year flag football is in the Olympics, American flag football.
Yeah, which it's actually pretty popular in China.
Really? Flag football?
Yeah, playing with frisbee, right?
No, that's frisbee. Flag football is where you play American football, but you
have a flag. I played that before.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
in the Olympics. You could be a gold medalist flag football player now.
I played it when I was in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's the prime flag football time.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, also frisbee.
Frisbee. Is that also Olympics now?
Oh no, that's not. But it became popular in China.
But I'm fully in support of small sports being elevated to Olympic sports because
people play it.
I just love the story of this idea that somebody devoted their life to flag football, and all of a sudden they get the biggest gift possible, where all of a sudden they go from being this obscure person to like head of Team USA. And then, of course, Team USA, I expect we're going to destroy everybody in flag football. You basically have already won the gold medal, and you didn't even do anything. You just,
I wonder if other countries play that sport.
I don't know. It's like in baseball, we have the World Series. And it's just
exactly.
America
Just
and
America.
one Canadian team. Poor Toronto. But anyway, going back to the comedy thing,
What do you think is the stereotype of a white person in China? Because we deal with this a lot in comedy.
So what I have to what does the Chinese audience think about me as a stereotype?
Exactly.
I think that there's a couple different stereotypes. I mean, one is just sort of like, they say, oh, 老外, 声音很大, whatever, just like, 敢说, just like loud speaking. I think the big challenge is that part of stereotypes in comedy are involved. Like stereotypes in comedy are tied together in some sort of way. But it was frustrating that in China they would just have 西方人. It was like all the Westerners, or we hear this word 欧美人, American, Chinese, European American, which also, by the way, covers Australian people, even though they're not in America or in Europe. Vaguely white-looking, Western cultured people are all kind of lumped into one big pot. And so that was kind of funny because it was like I couldn't make Boston jokes for sure.
Exactly. And as a result, there are a lot of Ukrainians and Russians teaching English in China.
Exactly.
As long as they
and they'll steal my job. They'll steal my and I'm like, you guys are worried about this. They will steal my job though, because they'll take less money than I will, and they'll get in there. But the challenge was actually finding an identity that was able to be accessed in China, but it was not broad like all Westerners. So that's why I came up with the 美国东北人. I'm the American, 东北人, whatever, from northeastern, the Northeast, which actually from the Northeast of America. And so even though I actually don't do that many jokes like pretending to be a Chinese 东北人, but it was enough that it reminded people like, oh, you're from a specific place, not a broad place.
Yeah, not broad. Euro-American.
Yeah, exactly. Euro-American. Or similarly, I mean, do you feel like, I guess you've been out of, you're from Dongbei as well, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm from northeast part of China.
Jilin,
and then
where are you from?
Jilin province.
Yeah, Jilin,
it's right next to Korea and Russia.
Yeah, so but that's in China, comedically, that's a very specific place. Like the Dongbei people have their own stereotypes or whatever within China. Yeah. And so that's
kind of reminds me of Texas.
Yeah, there's something there. There's 大方. So do what I want.
We're big.
Yeah. No oil though.
Oh, there is.
Oh, there is oil?
Yeah, oil in the Heilongjiang province.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Is there are there legit Dongbei oil people?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
No.
How is this not a TV show? This would be if Hollywood and America were working together, we would have Dongbei 石油人.
Yeah, by the way, it's kind of interesting. Because a lot of the stereotypes it's kind of mirroring each other. In China, a lot of white people got lumped together, but here in America, all the Asians. Yeah.
Well, this was the thing is coming back
here. We can't tell Asians apart.
Yeah, or even just there's a lot of Asian America, or in America, the term that seems to be the most appropriate term is AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander. Yeah. And I'm like, this is over half the population of the world. And half of the landmass of the world if you count the Pacific Ocean. I know. So it's the tent seems to be really big, and it is. I guess it's I guess that's good in sort of a welcoming sense, but it also makes it strange. I did some of these Asian comedy shows in LA, and it's you have Filipino people, you have Indian people, you have Korean people, you have whatever Hawaiian people, and it's it's an interesting show, but it was what do we do? And that
it's kind of. It's fascinating because AAPI, like what you said, people from so many diverse countries all came to America and become a minority.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
Well, that was the thing, and the thing that I get here is they're like, wow, you do Chinese comedy, what a niche. And I'm like, in China, it's not a niche, it's just comedy.
That's the word, exactly the same word I heard from some of the agencies here. They're like, oh, you do stand-up comedy. Oh, you're Chinese, but we don't do niche.
Yeah, we don't niche comedy. And that was the thing.
What big name here.
Well, that was the thing is I think, and this is why I think the internet is going to save us all, because what I think that this idea of niche it depends on who your friends are. If you hang out all the time with Chinese people, you don't think Chinese comedy is niche. It's just your friends telling jokes.
Yeah.
And then, but if you're a talent executive or you're an agency person or you're an advertiser or whatever, if you just look at the ads and 90% of the people on the ads are white people, then it looks like everybody else is niche.
Yeah.
Whereas if you live I even think about the expat community in Beijing. Like in the expat community, was Great Leap Brewing niche? There was a Western brewery and they were just doing their thing as a brewery and anybody could come. But would that be a niche industry? I mean, just because there were a very small group of expats doing it. And similar here back in the States, it's we have Chinese comedy in the States now that's come up because it's been getting so big.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Is this niche? I don't know. It's hard to say because it's definitely, I think you could say it's not mainstream. But I don't think you can say it is niche, if that makes any sense.
Exactly, yeah.
So it was
the absolute number is actually huge.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a lot of the Chinese community, or even just the nature of entertainment now. It's it's not the 1950s where you make Wonder Bread and everybody eats the same piece of bread. Similarly, entertainment, it's why do we think that only Marvel movies are mainstream and everything else is niche? You could say the whole of comedy is niche. Comedy is only one type of content.
Exactly. Yeah,
So I think it's a lot of it is based off of the worldview and what the internet does is it blows that all up because if my niche content is getting 10 or 100 times the traffic your mainstream content is, who the hell cares if it's niche?
Exactly.
And there's many ways of making a good thing, and so you might even start trying to say I'm going to make this for a certain audience group, but then it's almost like writing a book. I've read books of authors where they say I write the book for one person and that's me. So that's niche.
I totally understand. Yeah. Also, the idea of big data and statistics. It makes no sense. It just predicts what people like last year. Doesn't predict
that's a good
the
point.
future. Yeah. Oh, we were talking about people can't tell a certain group of people.
Yeah. Oh God.
Recently, there's an instance.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is probably in Canada.
Yeah.
During a basketball game. Basically, they did this celebrity lookalike thing on the Jumbotron.
Oh, no.
There was this one Asian dude.
Yeah.
And his lookalike was Simu Lu.
Yeah.
And then they look nothing alike.
They look nothing alike. They're close enough.
But the funny thing is, my first thought was, wow, even the computers couldn't tell us apart.
You got to be. I guess that's good for you, though. It means that there are fewer Asian faces in the end of the world AI database.
But you think further. Probably the computer programmers were Asian, right?
Oh, yeah.
That just means Asians can't even tell us apart.
Asia, whatever it was about your secret knowledge, once it went into the computer, it got lost. This reminds me of in China. Every time I go to China, they say, "Wow, you know who I look like? Guess who I look like? Who do Chinese people think I look like? Everyone, it's the same. Everything. Every time it's the same person.
Really?
Yes, the same person." They're a comedian. I'll give you a hint.
A comedian that looks like you.
Yeah. Or that Chinese people think looks like me. It's happened literally 400 times that people say that.
Oh, and I know that. Jim Carrey?
No. They don't know Jim Carrey.
Oh, well, Jim Carrey's huge in China.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well,
everybody knows him.
Jim Carrey, Mr. Bean. They say I look like Mr. Bean.
What?
I know. Not a lot. Not a lot. I guess
not even
maybe
the
if I
shape
do,
of your face.
Maybe if I do faces, but but this is the funny thing is, and again, and
the eyebrow. Why?
I don't really look like him at all. I think that, but when it comes to foreign comedians, 5 maybe that people know. So it's him, Chaplin. There's not a ton. So I think that people, you do comedy and yeah, I guess you look like Mr. Bean. So that's my one is that I look like Mr. Bean. And then I feel like this is the stereotype. All foreigners look either like Mr. Bean, Harry Potter, Brad Pitt, or Jennifer Aniston. Like the women all look like Jennifer Aniston, which is funny because I think the women would like to look like Jennifer Aniston, but I don't know if they do.
That's so weird.
It is kind of funny.
Yeah. I guess I lived in the U.S. for a very long time. So I just don't have that perception anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's face blindness. I think they've done research on this. It's like if you see 100 faces, you can tell minute differences.
Yeah.
If you grew up your whole life looking at one type of face and then all of a sudden you see 2 Asian people and you've never seen Asian people before, you're going to have a hard time figuring them apart.
Yeah.
But, but now it's like part of me wants to think, though, it's like we have the internet now, you don't see other people on TV,
But I think that's exactly the problem. The TV is not that diverse. At least it wasn't used to be, right?
Yeah.
But now it's getting better.
And this is where the internet again is going to save us all because the internet will air anything that works. Like I think of do you know that account How to Basic? Have you ever seen this? No. It's like oh god, it's like. I don't even know how to describe it. Like it'll look like a video where this guy's going to be like cooking some pancakes or whatever. But like very quickly, it just goes off the rails. He pours in way too much milk and 7 eggs, and then like smashes the thing against the wall, and then bam, they like tear the whole wall down, and like it just goes absolutely like ape shit. It's just completely wacko,
like non sequitur,
craziness, weird sound effects, and this sort of thing. It was like a very popular channel on the internet. They get tons of hits. People clearly like watching it. You would never get that approved by any sort of TV station.
Oh, yeah.
Like the plan for the show is absolute madness. Who is it for? But there's something about that, or like an account I saw where this guy dresses up like a snail, and then he goes to like intersections with cars, like to a crosswalk, and just lies down on his stomach and just snails across the crosswalk. And like, again, you would never get a TV station to approve. You could probably even not get that approved as a sketch within an actual sketch comedy show.
Yeah, I
like
know.
It would be, you'd need a fight for it. And yet when you can just do whatever you want,
let the market
decide, then what you're seeing is you see a lot of people that are just like, it's an Asian guy and he cooks, but he doesn't necessarily cook Asian food. He's just a good cook. Or like this guy is a great graphic designer and they happen to be Indian or whatever. Like, you see people's like humanity coming through. Like there's a guy in China that runs a social media account I love that he makes like shitty robots. Like he's like, oh, 这个机器人很人性. Like, but it's all like, it'll be something like, I have trouble wiping my own butt on the toilet. So I created a butt wiping robot, and it's like, and then they'll put like a fake, like a mannequin there, and like, the mannequin goes flying. And like, this is just straight up funny. It doesn't matter that this guy is doing this engineering in China.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter he's hosting it in Chinese.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
So this is the thing that's actually been funny in LA is like, it falls to me to explain to the people in the industry that I've met, and I don't know many because I haven't been here, but like other people I've met, I'm like, so the Asian American audience seems to be getting more people on camera and on screen. There are more Asian American shows, but there are no shows, as far as I know, for first generation Chinese here. Like the Chinese immigrant first generation community that watches the 脱口秀大会 and all these places, all these Chinese stand-up shows. And so I'm saying like there's a big audience here. Like this last year, I've done touring around major cities in the world. There's an international, highly educated, white-collar, wealthy audience that is paying ridiculous ticket prices to see whoever comes through because they're so eager to see stand-up. And like, I just can't get anybody to recognize that audience is different than the Asian American audience.
Yeah.
And I'm like the wrong person to be having this conversation.
Yeah, it's I know. Yeah. I encountered a similar situation when I was in Boston back 11 years ago. I wanted to do a Chinese language show, but nobody wanted to do it because for two reasons. One is they rarely see any Asian faces in their comedy clubs. And the second one was they feel that the Asian crowd don't buy enough liquor when they watch the show.
I will say, though, as the guy that ran a comedy club in China, the expats bought 4 times as much alcohol as the local Chinese.
Exactly, yeah.
But this is the problem is like, is it this is the comedy club's business model's fault? Like, just charge more for the ticket or whatever. Yeah. Like you can figure out that problem.
Exactly.
But they make their money on the liquor.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So what did you do? Did you ever manage to get it through? I don't know.
Yeah. I got it through. I just basically told the theater owners, I said, like, yeah, you can take a bigger cut. I just
want to do it.
Yeah, but then it's still, we packed the room. It's pretty amazing.
But it's the thing. It's like, again, because it goes against their worldview.
Yeah.
Like you could pack the room once and twice and 3 times and 4 times and 5 times, and then they're like, oh, it's real.
Yeah.
But if you have a show that makes sense to them from day one, if it was like whatever, feminist comedy hour, and then you pack it once, like this is the next thing. Like you don't need to prove yourself 5 times before they realize a community's there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, what do you think though about is this because the Asian community in America is disconnected from these spaces? Because like if you're a comedy club owner, you know a couple feminists. But you may not know any Asian people, if you're a comedy club owner.
Yeah, that's such a weird thing. 'Cause, for the first 7 or 8 years of my stand-up career, I rarely see any Asian faces in the crowd. To the extent that, when I was touring, I came to San Francisco. I went to San Francisco. I looked out the window. I saw 80% Asian people,
and then inside the club,
and then they were just getting into the club.
Yeah,
I got really nervous. I was would my jokes work with the Asian crowd? I have
no idea.
Had no idea.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
That's exactly what I'm dealing with the white crowd or the non-Asian crowd in America. Dude, it's bizarre because like my life here is like I tried doing these jokes and I couldn't get them to work.
Yeah, let's step back a little bit.
So,
are you starting your stand up in English here now?
Yeah, so I'm doing a little bit more English, but I'm also I think the challenge is I have a lot more experience as a comedy writer than I have as a performer in English. I wrote a lot and I performed a lot in Chinese, but I haven't performed a lot in English. And so I think this is one of the challenge for me is like, as a stand-up, you need to be comfortable. You need to be comfortable and you need to know who you are so you can say who you are.
Yeah.
But I don't know who I am in America because I haven't lived here as an adult. So I'm like, and then when I look at my life, everybody I know in America is either a Chinese immigrant, first generation. I don't really even know that many Asian Americans. I know first generation Chinese people. I know Americans that lived in China before and then have now moved back to America. And I know people I met in college or high school. That's all I know.
Okay.
So I'm like still trying to figure out how to be an American again and like pass as American in front of other Americans, which is a weird situation to be in.
Well, and you don't have to pass as an American, right?
But I feel, but this is the thing is I feel like I need to do that because my style in comedy, having been in China for 10 years, is very different. And so it's as I said before, a little bit more optimistic. Like in America, I went to a club, actually. I did this as an experiment. I said, I'm going to count on how many jokes don't have to do with politics or race. And there was like nothing the whole night. It was like either politics or race. On race, like what I found is that when I do bits, and I did bits about China and they weren't working. And then so I decided to start the show by speaking Chinese for like 30 seconds with no intro. And that kind of worked. But it really only worked when there was a Chinese speaker in the audience.
Wait a second. Which club did you go to that only talks about politics and race?
Oh, yeah?
'Cause most clubs mostly just talk about sex.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I guess I should have taken that for granted. I'm like, sex is like, everything is sex. Sexy politics.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was trying to figure out how to get these jokes through, and I figured if there was a Chinese person in the audience and we could just do a little bit of banter and that the Western audience knew that person was comfortable, they would get comfortable.
I see.
If they weren't there, then the problem was they would start looking left and right for anybody Asian looking.
Oh.
And so there would be some Filipina person there who's like, I don't know, Chinese. I'm not Chinese. Like, and so it's been an interesting process of trying to figure this out. I actually want to ask you about this while I have you here about your routines and how you adjust between the American audience and the Chinese audience. Like, are you looking to translate bits that work that you know the premise is gettable, or are you because like one of the things that I've loved about your comedy and that I'm trying to do, and it's really hard, is it feels like you're the same person in Chinese as you are in English, which all the Laowai performer in China, no identity of any Laowai performer, foreigner performer in China that I've seen would work in the West. It only works in China because it plays completely into the Chinese worldview. And I've always had to never want to go all the way there, but you have to acknowledge that, you know, there are things that people know about America and you have to play in that wheelhouse or else you can't make people laugh there.
Yeah.
So like for here, how do you feel like you have to split your personality into an English side and a Chinese side or American side, Chinese side? Or?
Yeah, I really, how can I say this? You know, I don't have a good answer for that, you know, because I just go on stage and do whatever I think is funny. But I have to say that when I first started doing English stand-up comedy, I do have to say something about my background.
Yeah,
you know? That's why I go on stage and say, hey, I'm Irish or something.
Yeah.
You know?
But that makes sense. It's like you need to address the weirdest thing in the room.
Exactly, yeah.
You know.
But for you, I just wonder, you know, if you can just come on stage and say, hey, I came from China or something.
Yeah. I wonder, because it's the interesting thing is that I think a lot of people think that the audience is going to be very sensitive. But what I found is that's not really true.
No.
Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing that actually surprised me.
Yeah.
Once I got on stage and I said, oh, I'm from China, people they applauded.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, I actually lived in Texas for 8.5 years. And the audience started to boo. I was like,
where are you? This is Boston? It's got to be Northeast?
Yeah, well, this is like Midwest.
Oh,
somewhere
Midwest.
in Ohio. It's like, yeah.
That'd be fun. Yeah, it's weird. It's like the that identity thing.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, what you said is exactly right. You just have to do what you think is funny.
Exactly,
And I think that's been my... I've always had this question in the back of my head, which I think now after a couple years is starting to get answered. But because I started my comedy career in China, it was always in the back of my head. It was like, are you able to do this because of China and the special situation, you speaking Chinese and the special market here, or are you just straight up a comedian?
Yeah,
like
pretending
who's pretending to
China,
be like, but I wasn't. It was a weird thing in China. I was never pretending to be Chinese, and yet I didn't have to. People would always make these assumptions about like, oh, part of the show is that that he speaks Chinese, and it was never something I thought about. Like, I'm never going to like, oh, I'm going to use the fact that they're interested in the Chinese. I was just trying to tell jokes, but
I have to say that, you know, as an American speaking Chinese, you immediately become very endearing to them. You know, you're like, oh, I'm learning the culture, learning the language. Yeah.
Well, what it does is it shows respect.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because it's like you need it, like even if the jokes are bad, you can tell I spent 10
your
years.
jokes are fine.
Oh, no, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But even if I bombed, like you don't feel like they're going to be upset at you unless you say jokes that they don't like to hear, which can be bad. You know, I made some,
it can be bad anywhere.
It can be bad anywhere, but like it felt oddly enough more comfortable. And also, I don't know whether you felt this in your second language, but it's almost easier to express emotion in your second language because you just don't have the muscle memory sometimes in your first language of saying exactly what you feel. You know, I don't know about you.
There's less of baggage, I feel.
Yeah.
Emotional baggage in a second language.
There's less baggage, whereas here in my native language, my language, obviously my English is better than my Chinese, but like I knew kind of who I was within that society and that place. And also I had a lot of confidence, I think, that came from being part of Chinese stand-up from the very beginning. So when I was there, you know, there were back when I was there in 2012, like you were bigger than stand-up. People didn't know what 脱口秀 was, but they knew, Huang Xi 是不是在白宫? You know, like they had this, they knew that this was an American thing. And so doing the American thing from the beginning in China, everything I did was right. Because the audience had no touchstone. So they couldn't say like, oh, I really think that, you know, he should be hitting that topic harder. Like, you know, like they would just be like, oh, this is really cool. I'm getting to see the American art form in Chinese from the American.
Yeah, that's it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is.
Remember you mentioned the courtyard in Beijing.
Yeah.
I actually did a stand-up show in the courtyard in front of, you know, grandma, grandpa,
like the
uncles and kids. and they just sit on a little stool and they just listen. After my show, I just
old
said,
style 相声.
Yeah, exactly.
Old 相声.
So after my set, I just asked people, hey, you guys have any questions? And this lady just raised her hand. I'm like, finally, someone's interested. I said, oh, what was your question? And she's like, do you think my grandchildren should go to America to study?
Yeah. Welcome to the comment section on all of my Billy videos.
I know,
where I make a video about some aspect of American culture and somebody is like, please, how do I learn English? I'm like, oh my God. Yes. Well, what did that make you feel? How did that make you feel?
It's a little bit frustrating, to be honest. But I also get to see the progress. You know, at the time, I think the most relevant question for me usually is how is stand-up comedy different from crosstalk in China? But now, from 2 years ago, the question has become people asking crosstalk performers. Yeah. How's crosstalk different from stand-up comedy?
Yeah. So it is bigger. I mean,
the standard is changed.
The standard has changed. And also the thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is that in the original Chinese stand-up scene in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong, all these places came from English stand-up, and then the first Chinese people watched the English stand-up, and then they started doing their own. Everybody I did shows in London, Paris, New York. These people don't even watch the local English stand-up. They were watching Chinese TV, saw Chinese people doing stand-up, and they're pretending to be Chinese stand-ups. And there is an aspect of any sort of performance art, like the first step is imitate.
Yeah.
But these people are imitating the people they see on Chinese TV. And that is a big change because when you do that, you're it's like a game of telephone. Like what I might think is important about stand-up might not come through, and what they think is important about stand-up might be something that I don't even think about because I watch those shows occasionally, usually to see my friends who are on there, but I'm not a big fan of the show. I'm following every person, every joke. Yeah. So there'll be people on there that are talking about stand-ups that I've never heard of.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is the internet age. You have to have a story, a narrative. As long as you have a narrative, people just believe that's the real thing. Because I have a science background, that stuff always frustrates me.
Do you feel like you have to play into that, or at this point, are you just willing to say if I want to talk about it, I will. If I don't, I won't.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I feel the latter. I don't have to. You don't
have to
go with whatever they think is stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
To the extent that sometimes I go to a show, they always feel you need a mic stand there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not stand-up. I'm just who said this?
There's some weird. I think that this is the interesting thing about. You saw this in the brief period of time that they had the sort of late night style desk host shows in China.
Yeah.
They're like, you can get the desk and the lights and the theater. And then instantly, the first second, you realize you didn't get the important stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All the important stuff you missed.
Because
it was backstage. It was like they didn't know you needed 10 writers. They didn't know that it was hard. They had to figure that all out, and then all the shows bombed.
Yeah.
But also in stand up, I think this is part of the thing is you need to have something to say, and that is that's not necessarily apparent from watching a lot of the Chinese stand up, outside of. As you said, I'm an engineer. I'm going to do my engineer jokes. I'm a whatever. I'm a, shengyu or whatever. I'm an older, 30-something unmarried woman. I'm going to do 30-something unmarried woman jokes. You don't think about that. That element of stand-up has been difficult to get over to China, not because it's not in the underground scene. I feel like in the underground scene, people kind of get it.
Yeah.
But it's just not easy to get that to air. And then when you get it to air, now people are copying the stuff that was aired. They're not getting the stuff that made those people good enough so that their 5 minutes of airable content was good.
Oh, yeah. People don't see the work behind it.
Yeah. And so,
I got this a lot. People are like, oh, your overnight success. I'm just like, what are you talking about?
I've been doing mics for years.
I know, yeah.
And do you feel like for being growing up, so to speak, as a comedian, because we have some that's in common. I kind of grew up as a comedian in China. You grew up as a comedian in America. We grew up in the other place doing comedy. Do you feel like that prepared you well for going to China, to have been through the Boston scene?
Well, I mean, it helped a lot in terms of stage presence. You know, your stage, the amount of time you spend on stage counts everywhere you go. That's for sure. But then in terms of content, it's hard. You know, I just feel that I have to start from zero after I got to China. It's
That's what I've been fighting. I kind of feel like I've started from zero again. And I know I haven't, it's not literally zero, but it feels like zero.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just been kind of like stuck in this realm of like, because I also feel like I want to have the type of persona that I can, if I do English stand-up, I'll subtitle it in Chinese and put it up in China. If I do Chinese stand-up, I'll subtitle it in English and do it in America. And the internet has never been better. It's never been a better time to do that. I had a bit I did that was like a bilingual bit that went viral this week. I got like 1 million hits on TikTok, the Western TikTok, of this bit that was like literally half in Chinese. But because it's subtitled, it works. You couldn't do that for a regular audience. You would need a bilingual audience. But the technology is making me more and more confident it's possible. But it's hard because live, that doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
You know, like live, you don't have the algorithm showing it to only the people that get it, you know?
Yeah. It's, I actually did a show in Guangdong province. This was like years ago. And they put out a huge screen.
Oh, yeah?
Just translating my jokes into Chinese.
So you did an English show, and then they translated it live. Did it work?
No.
Yeah,
it was hard, you know?
Yeah. You would almost have to have the first 5 minutes of the routine entirely being playing with a thing. There was one, I really regret I didn't get to do this because I wanted to see how it worked, but I was invited once to do a speech at the they used to have this thing called the National Consultation on People-to-People Relations.
What?
It's the U.S. government and Chinese government had a meeting for people-to-people relations. This was like
That's
7
a real
years.
thing.
This was a real thing, and they had John Kerry and Madame Liu Yandong, who was on the Politburo, were the people, and they because I was a Fulbright scholar, they called me and they said, "Could you do a 5-minute comedy speech?" And I said yes. And then I asked, "How am I going to do this?" Because they're not all going to speak the same language, and they said, "We have simultaneous interpretation." And so I was like, "Ooh, that's a challenge." How do I? And so I prepared this speech that was gonna try to do jokes that would work with simultaneous translation. And so the first joke was I was gonna say like I know that we have interpreters today helping, so I just wanted to thank them and say what are you gonna say? What you gonna do?
They translated it.
So and then in the end, and this is why I have a beef with Matt Damon, even though he doesn't know this, but the day before the event, they flew me to D.C. I was going to be in the event. And then the day before the event, they said, Matt Damon is filming a movie with Zhang Yimou, and they filmed a video, and we're going to show that instead. And so I was in the back of the room, like watching Matt Damon being like, yeah, the movie's going good. I'm like, my jokes. So Matt Damon, if you're out there, if you're seeing this, I know it's not your fault, but it is kind of your fault. So like, I don't know.
How can I say this about Matt Damon?
Yeah, I know.
He's a savior
of
Great Wall. Okay.
Yeah, he saved the Great Wall,
I know.
but he didn't save my comedy career. So couldn't save everything, which, you know.
Well, it gives you some material.
But this is the thing is I feel like this, it's funny. It's like living in China as that minority, it gave me at least a direction that I could say, okay, I'm going to need to deal with this. I can't just like, as a white guy here, I could choose to deal with it or not.
Yeah.
But in China, I had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so having to deal with it brought some good things. Like it made me pick this direction to the content that made the audience connect quicker. But it also has left me messed up here because now I'm like, what do I do if I don't have that spark?
Yeah.
And I know that I can do it. It's just that it's almost feeling like it's starting from zero again. Like you have to come up with, and that was why I was interested about the identity, whether you particularly made the choice to be the same person or to try to be the same person. Because it definitely looks like you're not trying to do the opposite.
Yeah, because I guess I'm just not a good actor. I'm just stick with this one guy. But I have to say that also, there is a English comedy scene in China, but the thing is, the jokes works there doesn't necessarily work here.
I personally just like when I do an English show in China, I just do my Chinese routine in English.
Oh yeah,
and
it works. Yeah, exactly.
So
that's so just like I guess just something with the environment.
It's life experience. I think a lot of people, at least for me, they're like, "Oh, what's it like between the languages?" I'm like, the languages. Once you speak both languages, that's not the problem usually.
Yeah.
Usually it's life experience. It's like if I want to mention if I want to mention something going on in China, it just feels weird because it's an improv technique. In improv, one of the ideas is like the weirdest thing in the scene has to be explained.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever the weirdest thing is, if we're on the moon,
Yeah.
but then I just like, and again, what is the weirdest thing? If we're on the moon, but we're kind of being jokey about it, but then I get like way too close to you, like that has to be explained before the moon.
Okay.
Because
I see what people see first.
yeah, and that's why again, if hi, I'm Irish, like address it, and then you can move on.
Exactly. Yeah.
But like, so like the weirdest thing, there will be jokes that I want to tell that are funny stories, but because they happen in China, the fact that you're telling a story about China is the weirdest thing. People are not ready to hear the subway joke about China.
Exactly. Yeah,
because they're just weird. You were in China? What? Like,
what?
You're like, but in China, when you live in China, it's just a subway joke.
Yeah.
Here, it's like, I need to do a setup joke to tell you how I got to China, and then a setup joke to tell you what the transit is like, what it's supposed to be like. And then I can do a joke about how one day it wasn't like that. But I need to be 3 tags in before I can do this joke about, and also the audience doesn't have the confidence. I had a joke that I was trying to do about in the buses in Beijing. Some of the old guys will be like just singing Beijing opera in the bus. And like some of them even bring their little speaker with them, like the really low quality speakers. Sort of thing. And like, but in China, that is not that unusual.
Yeah.
So like that's the setup.
Yeah, and people get it.
And then I can do a joke about how like, well, I learned some Beijing opera and I join in, and that would be unusual. But here it's like there's so much stuff you would have to set up to get there.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
I just don't even try.
But even things that people do, even it's the same things that people in both countries do, they react differently.
Yeah.
I had a joke about going to the gym. The first time going to the gym, I was like, I feel so excited, pumped. It feels like the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Once every 4 years.
Yeah.
That joke always killed in China, but here I pretty much got nothing.
I think it's also like because I'm trying to think of why that would. Yeah, I feel you on that. I think it's just like. I think it has to do a little bit with the individualism here.
Yeah.
Like again, this is an overblown analysis, but like I think that here it's like you get to decide how much you go to the gym. And in China, it's like, well, if you go to work out, you should go regularly. Like I think there could be something there, but it's some stuff just doesn't work the same way. And I wonder whether this is and a lot of this is just like in order to have a joke, you need to have something that people think and then you have to jump off of reality. You can't just like be jumping off of nothing.
What? Yeah. Or maybe some people didn't realize, the Olympics is every once 4 years.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I feel like you'd be pretty safe
but
I would think you'd be safe, but maybe you're right. Maybe it could be stuff like that. Or like, this is why, depending on where I am in China, I can change some of my jokes sometimes. Like if I don't think they know a lot about American geography, I'll just say Dongbei.
Yeah.
But if you know that if I'm in Beijing or Shanghai, I might say I'm from Boston. And that added like specificity makes the joke better. It's always better to be specific. And so that's a lot of the challenge with my China jokes here is like, I want to tell a story about being in in Sichuan and hiking up Umeishan and like they don't know any of these words.
Yeah.
I have to say I was hiking in China and now all of a sudden this is less interesting. It's like it's just bad storytelling. Like, if I was hiking Mount Ume in the Sea of Bamboo, that is interesting. but also kind of distracting because they're like, does he think we know where Mount Lemay is? Like, I don't expect you to, but that it's like that thing also with like, like brands. It's like the same sort of thing. Like, if you want to say like, we were middle class, my dad drove a Toyota or whatever. Like, you need to find another brand to get that idea across in China because it's not going to be Toyota and it may not even be a car, maybe your dad had a bike or whatever, So there's like all sorts of references that are difficult. And yet I still kind of feel the optimism because it feels like the core of comedy is still people telling stories and being themselves.
Yeah, I would say that the deep down, the logic behind the jokes are the same. That's The sort of like I remember I when I was studying xiangsheng, Master Ding had a book that he wrote, and he had all the different like baofu techniques, like the joke techniques, sanfan sido, whatever, biyu, whatever, like it was all the same stuff as the Western comedy. Exactly. Yeah.
It was like the ways people laugh are relatively similar, and even watching other countries' comedy, although I don't have as deep of an understanding because some of it I can't understand. Yeah. But even like other countries. In other cultures, you even look at British comedy versus American comedy. Stylistically, they're different, but like it's the same human emotion going on. Like heightening is funny. Something being more important is funnier than less important. Unless it's so unimportant, it's funny. Exactly. But like stuff like that is like I think it plays. So for you then, what do you feel like? Having been in both scenes now for quite a while, how do you balance your brain in terms of trying to build both of these at once? Or is that not something you think of?
I try not to think of. It bothered me for a while.
It's bothering me.
Yeah, I've sometimes I feel paralyzed. I was like, oh, no, what should I do? This is... I don't even know today I should work on my English jokes or Chinese jokes.
I feel like if I do Chinese work, I feel like I'm neglecting my English work. And then if I do English work, I'm neglecting my Chinese work. And
I think it just depends on where I am and also what topic I feel is more valuable. Like in America, recently I've been working on this a comedy routine or a special whatever, just focusing on Asian hate because it's a pretty big event in the Asian community, and nobody quite address it systematically. I always got excuse me. I was invited to shows on TV networks. They were like, we want to talk about the coronavirus related racism toward Asians. I said, okay. But I also want to talk about anti-Asian racism before the coronavirus.
Before the virus,
and then
it's like the virus invented
exactly.
Asian racism.
And then they were like, okay, we're going to look for somebody else. No, they don't want to talk about that stuff. Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about in my
Well, it's a good use of your platform then to get out and talk.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I
appreciate
really enjoyed our conversation.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And everybody watching, Joe is a real inspiration for us bilingual comedians. I don't have anyone to look at.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
So it's great.
I wish you the best of luck with your comedy here in LA and your tea.
Hopefully we'll get. Hopefully my visa eventually will come through and I'll see you in China again.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah.